Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lauren Young of Reuters and Ann Jenkins of AARP.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, it's wonderful to be here.
Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see you. Oh, it's strange. This is live. This is really happening.
Yes.
Joanne, we've heard so much. We're going to be talking about age diversity today and the Great Resignation. So my question to you, Joanne, is the Great Resignation real? Is it really happening? Are people actually retiring?
Well, so I think what's so interesting is I like to call it the Great Reflection, because I think, at the beginning of COVID, so many of us were at home, we're thinking about, is this what I'm going to do the rest of my life? Am I working in my passion job? And I think we saw a lot of people take early retirement, or people who could have retired, decided to make that adjustment. But now we're seeing almost 50% of those people who retired wanting to come back into the workplace, either full-time or part-time. But I think we all had that reimagining moment during the last 2.5 years to think about what I want to do with this extra 20 or 30 years, that longevity has brought to us. And I think that's so important. And we as employers and as a society really need to think about, how do we use the power of these multiple generations to create the workforce for the future that allows older workers to continue to thrive or either come back part-time and still be a part of that giving.
So the economy has shifted a lot in the past 2 years. And amid inflation and economic uncertainty, has that changed the job outlook, and has it changed people's ideas about age diversity in the workforce?
Well, first of all, let me just step back and say, not every company has embraced this age diversity. I think one of the important things that we want to see happen as companies think about their diversity, equity, and inclusion, that it includes age. And I would say almost half of companies that we have surveyed and talked to include age as a part of DE&I. And I think as we
define DE&I know everybody here knows.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we want that to include not only age, sex, culture, but also age, so that you create workforces that reflect the consumers that you're trying to serve.
Got it. So there's a war for talent. There's been a war for talent. We're in this weird period of economic uncertainty. Do people want more mature workers? What value do they bring to the workforce?
So I'm so excited that one of the things that we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years is working with the World Economic Forum and OECD to build a learning collaborative called Living, Learning, and Earning Longer. And the whole basis of this collaboration is to see what's working in the workplace with multi-generational members of the workforce all around the world. It's a free collaborative, so any companies out there who want to participate. But what we've been doing is talking to these multilateral, multinational corporations about their workforce and whether or not it includes older workers, and to make the case for how multiple generations in the workforce bring about higher returns on investment. You see the collaboration that occurs with an older, more experienced wisdom. Older workers create culture with a younger, probably more tech savvy, more video conscious younger worker team together, often produce a better product. And something that's more consumer friendly and understandable. And so we're seeing that in the cases that we've built out, that does does indeed turn true, that you're getting a better product, you're getting a better outcome. It's reflection of the consumers that companies are trying to serve.
So that AARP collaborative, I think there's 75 member companies, and the goal is to get to 100 by the end of the year.
Yes.
So if you are interested, talk to Joanne, find her people. They want you. You mentioned the younger workers. They haven't been in the office for the past couple years, really, in a lot of cases. What skills do you think are being missed? What kind of experiences are they lacking when they're not in the office with people of all different ages and different diverse skill sets?
So let me first say that our culture at AARP has always been about being together, being in community. The issue of isolation, particularly in older people, it has always been at the forefront of how we think about how we serve our members, our customers. And so we also see that in the workplace. We also see that with younger workers who perhaps want to work or are used to working virtually. And I think what we're doing is we're in the office Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, Mondays and Fridays. We all 100% flex. And what we try to do is to make sure that we're just not making people come in the office just to say their seat has been filled. But there are moments of collaboration that need to occur to do the strategic thinking, to think about community, to think about the people we're serving, and how do we produce that and deliver that in a much more productive way that probably couldn't get done virtually. While at the same time, I think we've learned a lot about, do you really need to fly across the country to meet with somebody for a 1-hour meeting, or could that happen in a virtual environment? And so I think the key word is flexibility. We see from our own employees that our younger workers like to have the collaboration, but they want to be able to decide when the collaboration is important to have, versus our older, myself included, I like to have a framework for here's where we're going to be on what day, and so people can plan their days. But I think for us, we have about 75% compliance with people coming into the workforce on those 3 days. And we try to keep it fun and interactive, like so many of you guys have done, in enticing folks to come in and stay around and participate. But that energy and that innovation and that sense of belonging, we know that retaining employees, that 3 or 4 of the top things is about purpose and meaning, that they feel that's, after what we've all gone through in the last 2.5 years, I want to spend my time doing something that has meaning, that there is a continuous learning environment, and that isn't necessarily about the job I'm in, but it may be about something I want to do in the future, that flexibility is important because there's so much going on, and we certainly have been in the forefront of the caregiving initiative, whether it's for the young or the old. And so COVID has I think brought us together closer to our families, and we want to continue that. And then fourth is about the financial aspects of it, of whether or not you have a good paying job, hopefully with a pension to be able to do it. But those 4 things collectively are what I think is important about building that workforce for the future, and that's important to young people as well as older folks.
There's been so much research about the performance and how well companies do when they're diverse. We know that in Europe, all of the mandates to have more women on boards, for example, and what that means for companies. Why does it make sense to have an age-diverse workforce? Where are the benefits? What is the business cost?
So I think that one of the things that we see is that, the inclusion of older workers not only helps fill those shortages and staffing gaps, particularly as you see industries like in the financial industry and the healthcare industries, in the education, that there is this abundance of staff that are ready to come back and be a part of that. I think it's also, older workers bring culture. They bring responsibility, they bring that wisdom. We see a lot of companies talking about creating new positions that are business mentors, that I think is so key.
Talk a little bit more about that, because this is something I just learned from Joanne today.
Yeah. So as part of our Living, Learning, and Earning collaborative, one of the things that we see happening around the world is companies bringing back older workers, or perhaps if someone is thinking about retiring, transitioning them into a business mentor position, so that they actually are serving as mentors to different teams or to individuals. If you think about in the early days when we always talked about, oh, you need to have a mentor if you're younger and growing up. But I think this is sort of a new take on, how do you tap the enormous amount of talent and resources that you have in those older employees that you have in the workplace and team them with some up and coming young star who might be the top tech person or data person, but may not have the experience in how do you work across cultures, how do you work across business units and companies to bring about that desired culture that you want in your organization.
And those are soft skills, right? That's one of it's learning by seeing sometimes, and if you don't have the examples, then you can't learn.
And at AARP, we offer, you can retire if you want, but you can also take a 5-year transition retirement. And that might be working part-time for 5 years, or that might be taking off 6 months and then coming back, or it's a sabbatical in between to be able to do it. And we found that to be so helpful because particularly in COVID, so many people thought, I'm not dealing with this, I'm retiring. And now they are bored to death and they're looking to do something that has meaning and purpose in their life, and they're coming back into the workplace. Unfortunately, many at jobs that probably are beneath their skill level, but still doing it to have that day-to-day kind of interaction with other colleagues in the workplace.
One other thing I know that's important about age diversity is when you're particularly in the retail world, you want to see people like you when you come into a store. You want to be greeted by them, or you want to feel seen. So talk a little bit about how companies are embracing age diversity on the front lines in retail and other areas.
Well, let me just point out that for every dollar spent in the U.S., 56 cents of that dollar is spent by somebody over the age of 50.
Say that again.
Every dollar spent in the U.S., 56 cents is spent by somebody over the age of 50.
That's more than half, ladies and gentlemen.
$8.3 trillion a year.
That's a lot of money.
So if you're in that consumer market, consumer business, having people in your workforce that reflect the consumers that you're trying to drive or to purchase your businesses, I think that is so important, and we see that as a key determinant for how you build better teams, how do you build stronger multi-generational teams that reflect the consumer. And that's so important. I think we've seen that across, particularly in the marketing industry, in the television entertainment industry. There are more actors and actresses over the age of 50 than there are younger now. And you see that particularly in some of the award shows. And so, how do we think about the importance and the experience of that older worker and what they bring into the workforce, and more importantly, their purchasing power, that they are the ones making the decisions on how money will be spent in the households. And I think having that reflective culture inside your company is key to understand the market you're trying to sell to.
All these things sound great, but is age discrimination still happening?
Yes. And particularly, I think our last survey in the last 12 months said something like close to 70% of people over the age of 50 felt like they had felt some form of discrimination in the hiring process. And that comes about in different forms. It comes about in the way, the use of terminology. We want a recent college graduate. We want a energetic person who's going to fill this particular, all those are sort of key phrase words for I'm not interested in hiring an older worker. And I think we have to all be mindful as employers about how algorithms are built, that, with the inclusion of electronic applications and how we frame that, the sorting of all of those. I know at AARP we have probably 100,000 folks in our HR system that are interested in working at AARP. How those algorithms are built and how we use the phrases and the terminology that we need, that we use in those systems, determines the kind of applicants that we get in the system and ultimately make it to an actual interview.
We're almost at time, Joanne, but I am going to throw this one out to you. I didn't prepare you for this one, but we just saw this week we put the Queen to rest. 96 years old, she was still working hard and really working. What example does that give to the world?
Well, one of the things I've always said is we shouldn't determine someone's self-worth by how old they are. It's what they bring to the workplace. It's, how, they present themselves, the value, that the value is in the person, not in the age. And I'm hoping that we can do away with determining that someone can or cannot do a job when they turn 62 or 65. And you're starting to see some of the major corporations lift that 65 mandatory retirement in some of the industries or in some of the boardrooms. So I think that's a good thing. The Queen has set us up for a big win.
Great. Thank you so much, Joanne.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.